everybody. This is Let's Be Honest with Honesty J. Edward. And today I have a very special guest. I have Miss Melesa Johnson, lawyer extraordinaire. She is also running for Jackson County prosecutor. Vote for her August 6th. You know the rest. Melesa, what's up, baby?
I'm just so happy to be here with you, sis. You know, I am a Kansas City girl, so I love seeing people from the town doing amazing things, and you are certainly in that number. And from the day we've met, I've just felt amazing energy from you, and so I feel so fortunate to be here with you this evening.
Oh my gosh, I could listen. There was a reality show that we were supposed to do here in Kansas City. It never went through. COVID hit, and it didn't work out. But I interviewed her for the reality show, and I was sitting there like, just mouth open, like, who is this woman? Because she was so well-spoken, so eloquent. The energy was so explosive and authentic. And from that point on, I've been a fan. And so I'm just so excited that you are running for county prosecutor.
Yes,
I really do think that in this city, we need to see more of us in those type of positions, especially dealing with us. So I am very, very excited for you. I am very supportive of you. I'm very happy to have you on this platform so you could talk about who you are. So people we could just sit here in a very relaxed environment. We having our tea, honey.
Cheers.
We having our tea. We're just chilling in the living room and we're talking to a human being, a woman, a soul, a smart mind, someone who has a passion for the people, and it's an authentic passion for the people. I don't like to deal in fakeness. My name is Honesty, the titular name for all of this, you know, and so I really do respect and I love what you're doing. I love what you're standing for. It's honorable. And I just want to talk about you for a second. So let's start it back, because law, period, is a big deal, right? It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard to become a lawyer. Passing the bar, doing all these things, this is very hard. This is something that a lot of Black people, African Americans, want to get into. They naturally have a knack for representing and arguing, and but don't know how to get into it, don't have the discipline to do it, because it's discipline, right?
It's a lot of discipline.
Yeah, it's a lot of discipline. And so let's take it all the way back. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up, I'm a proud product of the east side of Kansas City, the 3rd district to be specific, right around 35th and Prospect. And I will say that growing up in that area of our community gave me so much grit and so much tenacity. You know, it is a much easier walk to succeed and to achieve certain things when you have been born with the silver spoon in your mouth. And granted, I never struggled because I have an amazing mother, but definitely grew up in an environment that some people would certainly frown upon. But I humbly believe that it made me the person who I am. Like, I know how to be, you know, cognizant of my environment. I know how to keep my head on swivel, as we like to say. I know how to be intuitive. I know how to read people. I know how to hustle. And that is, by and large, a product of me growing up where I grew up.
My family home is on 39th and Mungal. We have already established that I can't claim 39th and Mungal. I grew up in the suburbs, whatever. But 39th and Mungal, that's, especially in the area that we grew up in, like that's a part of town.
It's right.
She's not lying to y'all. So I think it's really awesome to come up where you serve. Because I think a lot of times there is a lack in empathy. There's a lack in cultural understanding, especially when you serve people that you cannot empathize. You can't sympathize with and you struggle to empathize with. There's a lack. You know, police teaching. A lot of times our children in the inner city, they are being taught by people that cannot relate to the culture, that don't understand the struggles. It's not in their psyche and in their build. And so there is a lack. There's this weird void of space and development because we can't understand each other. So for you to come from that area, 35th ain't no joke. There ain't nobody's not. You know, and to come back and do this for yourself, become a lawyer, get to a point where you are running for Jackson County prosecutor. Snaps to her, baby. We're gonna insert these snaps right here. Like, you go, queen.
Thank you so much, sis. Thank you. You know, that's part of the reason why I decided to run for prosecutor. it's very rare that somebody from my neighborhood gets the opportunity to be Ivy League educated and get a law degree and even be in the position to do this, to run for prosecutor. And because this issue, public safety, violent crime, disproportionately affects our people of color in these concentrated neighborhoods, including my neighborhood, the Oak Park neighborhood, it almost felt like a sense of duty. Like I felt like I had to. I felt like I had to inject some cultural competence into this space. You can't eliminate root causes that you don't understand. You can't shift the culture that you don't understand. And I mean, for better or for worse, I grew up listening to Lil Boosie, right? I grew up listening to T.I. I grew up listening to Tupac. My mom literally raised me on Tupac. And
you forgot to name the Kansas City rappers, though. That's
yes,
what I'm saying.
well, you know, I know Lil Rich the Factor. I know Lil Rich the Factor. Definitely. And then even Mac Dre, you know, had a big, heavy influence on the Kansas City culture.
A lot of people don't know that, though.
They don't.
That it's weird, that kind of Bay Area, Kansas City tie, which I don't quite know. I do know the root of it. It's not music, but it's weird. You know what I'm talking about, yeah. But that tie is very strong.
Exactly. But you have to understand us in order to be able to move us.
That's right.
And out of the 182 homicide victims of last year in 2023, 119 of them were Black men. 15 of them were Black women.
Run that stat back?
Yes. Out of the 182 homicides that happened last year, 119 of them were Black men. 15 of them were Black women. And frankly, we have never elected a person of color to be Jackson County prosecutor, an office that carries the responsibility to advocate for victims of color and offenders of color as well. And so we can't be surprised, right, that we haven't been able to make certain inroads. We haven't been able to exceed certain successes in this space because we don't have representation from the people most impacted leading at the seat of the table.
Just like I said, it's a gap.
It is. It's a huge gap.
It's a gap. We don't, and the thing is, a lot of people don't want to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people move off of stereotypes, what they've seen on TV, what they hear, but they don't really do the work to get to know someone, to know a culture, to understand. You can never, sometimes it makes me really upset. Because people try to tell me as a Black woman how I should or shouldn't feel when it's not their experience.
Absolutely.
And then it'd be different if you took the time to understand the experience. But just from the outside judging and saying, oh, it don't work like that.
Life does not work like that. And one of my biggest pet peeves is when people learn where I live, because I still live in the neighborhood that I grew up in. I bought my first house. Yes, I bought my first house in the same neighborhood that I grew up in, 60 seconds away from my mom. It was very, very important to me because I have studied at length, like old school Benton, right? Mm-hmm. Where Bruce R. Watkins lived. All of our lawyers, doctors, and teachers of color, still in the midst of segregation, we couldn't integrate into Brookside. So we had to make our own oasis in the middle of the East Side. And it was Benton, right? But those
that's where you went, though.
Yes.
Back in the day, you was on Benton. You was doing good for yourself.
You was doing good.
Yep.
And that's where all of the doctors and lawyers and professionals and tradesmen live. So guess what? Those babies, those little Black and brown babies got to grow up around lawyers, doctors, teachers, educators, politicians. And I felt like it was my responsibility to pay that forward. And so now I have the luxury of living next door to two beautiful brown boys that get to see me going to work every day, dressed up, getting into my car, being responsible, being a good steward of my home and taking care of my responsibilities. And to know how being around that energy impacted me, I am so fortunate that I hopefully get to impact the kids on my block in that same way.
You already doing it. You already doing it. That is, man, the older that I get, a lot of what I'm wanting to do is pay it forward. The interview before you, a professional was out of the norm. Mm-hmm. And this person usually wouldn't do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But they experienced, they could tangibly touch something and say, but that's kind of cool, right?
Exactly.
And that's little seed planted there all the way to this person becoming blah, 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 blah. So what I'm saying is that's so awesome that you get to pay that forward and you get to you get to, you use yourself as exposure.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people, when they are at a point where they can be a walking point of exposure, they move away to people that don't need the exposure.
But I have to stay close. Like, that's just the way that I'm built. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to speak to a bunch of high school students at East High School. And candidly speaking, these are not necessarily your straight A students, right? These are students that have probably gotten into a couple of scuffles at school, or may have been around different violent incidents, or may have even committed violence themselves. But I spoke to them alongside the current U.S. attorney and the first assistant public defender. They got introduced before me, and something came over my heart and my body and just told me to be authentic. These babies need you to be authentic so they can feel and see themselves in you. And so when it was my turn, all I said was, "Hey, y'all." And guess what they said in return? "Hey."
Yeah.
And then that opens up the door to me, for me to have a real candid conversation. And this was shortly after the Chiefs parade shooting, right? Where there were 2 juveniles. This is widely reported. This is public knowledge. A couple of juveniles were involved and a couple of young adults were involved. And we had a real candid conversation. Like, do you feel like parents have a responsibility or a blame to accept as to what happened that day? What can I do to help you change your life and shift the culture that you are experiencing? We were able to get really kind of in the weeds in a way that, frankly, and this is no disrespect to the amazing women that I stood beside when I spoke to these young people, but they can't do what somebody of the culture that is closer in age, that is closer to understanding can do. And when our primary demographic for homicide victims and offenders is young Black men ages 16 to 25, why not call on and elect somebody that understands that lived experience more than any of my opponents, frankly? Yeah.
Y'all hear the girl, right? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So let's back it up. Because we like to talk.
We do. We talk all right.
And I love it.
I got my tea, I'm in my pajamas, I'm comfortable.
We both in our pajamas, comfortable. Yeah. So back it up. Let's go back to your childhood.
Yes.
Okay. So you grew up on 35th in Prospect.
Yes.
Okay. And so you talk to me about school. Who were you? I want to talk to little Melesa.
Ooh, little Melesa was interesting. Okay. So little Melesa was definitely a nerd. She was definitely a nerd. And of course, at the time, I was very insecure and self-conscious about it. I did play sports, and so I kind
What you play, girl?
I played basketball and I ran track. I actually ran track all the way through college.
What position you playing basketball?
So, I had a little shot on me. I can handle the ball. So, any spot from 1 to 3, I wasn't big enough to play the post. But, I could do a little something. My best friends were way better than me. They're twins, and they were way better than I was. But
give them a shout out.
Yes, hey, Trisha, Shay. Hey, y'all. But pretty much anything that they wanted to do, I wanted to do. Right? And so they were the basketball girls. I was the track girl, and they ran track with me. I played basketball with them. And so that gave me a little bit of cool factor, but I was totally the kid during recess. I don't want to go outside. I want to read. Like, I was very much into cartoons and comic books growing up. I still am in a lot of ways. I'm a Marvel maniac. And so a little quirky.
Hold on. Best Marvel movie of all time.
Ooh.
5, 4.
Civil War. Because that's when we got introduced to the Black Panther, King T'Challa.
Okay.
And that was moving to see Black people depicted in such power and royalty in that way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, shortly after, Wakanda Forever, because I mean,
but Civil War, that was something.
Civil War was hard.
Yeah.
But
I have to look up the stat and insert it to make sure, like, I know what I'm on my movie game. But I think Civil War grossed in the top.
it was up there.
It's up there.
It had to be up there.
Look, John over there looking up stats.
I know, right?
Look smart, like I know what I'm talking about right now. I don't know, but I know that it made some bread. Like Civil War. Okay, Marvel.
So I was a little quirky. Spent a lot of time with my younger sister. But not a lot of friends. Really wasn't the popular girl at all. Pretty much a tomboy. I wore basketball shorts and t-shirts to school, probably all the way up to my later years in middle school. But I just really liked learning. I just always have. I've liked reading. I've liked learning. I've liked achieving, especially academically. And in high school, as we were talking about earlier, at the time, the Kansas City Public School District didn't have accreditation. And so my mother, being the amazing woman that she is, I'm a firm believer that every child is just one caring adult away from success. I'm just very fortunate that my caring adult was my mother.
Woo! Say that again one more time. Look into your camera and say that.
So I'm a firm believer that every child is one caring adult away from success. And I'm just very fortunate and privileged that my caring adult was my mother, my amazing mother. She worked 3 jobs as a single mother to send my sister and I to private school, to Bishop Miege, because the Kansas City.
Hey, that ain't cheap. Bishop Miege ain't cheap. I'm telling y'all, I went to a private school too. I went to O'Hara. And I think Bishop Miege's tuition was worse than O'Hara's.
It was expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It was expensive. And my mother sacrificed so much for me. And I think that's kind of where I got the sacrifice for the greater good gene. Because my mom went through a lot, like raising 2 kids by herself.
You and your sister?
Me and my sister.
Your younger sister?
My younger sister.
Okay, so you the older. You got older siblings.
I do have I have auntie, older sibling energy.
It ain't auntie, but it's definitely older sibling.
Right. Like, because, once my parents got divorced, I really had to start playing a bigger role as it pertains to my sister, and who, fast forward to present day, is my absolute best friend. But I went to Bishop Miege High School. It was an interesting experience. Sometimes Black children from the urban core, when either their families relocate or they're bussed out to suburban schools, of course, the parents feel like they're doing what's right for their child. They're giving them a great education, which I got an amazing education. And it was an amazing school. It was exactly what I needed at that time. Athletics were competitive. I ended up participating in dance team, prose competitions. I was doing poetry. It was really like a playground to dabble in whatever I was interested in. But with that, we have to accept the realities of sending little Black, brown, and boys and girls to suburban schools, and how sometimes that can result in toxicity, right? Like, I did get called the N-word. I did get called a monkey at Bishop Miege. And it was definitely a different time, before the civil rights awakening that our country has experienced from different incidents, whether you go all the way back to Tamir Rice or you go to the more recent incident of Tyree Nichols or George Floyd. And so this was pre all of that.
It was before cancel culture.
It was way before cancel culture. And so some days were rough. But again, it fortified my spirit and built my thick skin to a degree where you could drop me in any room and I'll survive and I'll be all right. Whether it's on the east side of Kansas City or it's in Overland Park at a board meeting. One of my kind of underlying life mantras is from the block to the boardroom. Anywhere across that spectrum, I'm going to be all right. And I think that is a direct byproduct of my upbringing, of my versatility. And I just wouldn't do it any other way, honestly.
I have a relative that used to say, I send my kids to school with the white folks to get toughened up, to learn business, to learn how this country is ran. And I send them to church with the Black folks to get their heart and their soul.
That is spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. Because, so many of our kids don't have an opportunity to operate in diverse environments. Kansas City is still very much a segregated city.
It is so, if you go to any of the border cities, if you visit California, if you visit New York, it's a melting pot. There's people from all over the world that mix and match, that are married, that have children. This is a way of life. When you come back here, it is very much so segregated. And a lot of people here don't even realize how segregated it is here.
Growing up, I could probably go, especially if school was out, I could go a week without seeing a white person at all.
Yeah.
At all. And now it's a lot different because gentrification happened. And, when housing...
Down there 35th and Prospect, I know it's a whole... You be down there like, whoo!
Walking dogs, riding bikes. But I think it can be a good thing, right? Because I think, again, young people prosper in neighborhoods that have diversity in income, that have diversity in race. But my experience growing up, it was this is pre-gentrification when, the Brookside home costs just skyrocketed. And so now people can't afford necessarily Brookside or Pendleton Heights. Now they're coming over to Vineyard. They're coming over to Benton, right? But when I was coming up, it was all black, all black. I would literally have to go out of my way to see a white person just in the natural course of life when I was growing up. And so I'm very thankful for my high school experience to give me that diversity so that I can operate in different rooms, because that's the world, right?
It's the world. Well, that's who runs our world, exactly. our country. I went to 8th and 9th grade. I went to Kansas City Christian out in Overland Park. Row in Overland Park, and that was a complete, because my parents wouldn't let me go to public school. I'm a preacher's kid, and so what I learned there and what I saw and what I was a part of and what I was privy to really, I feel like you said, helped me move around in different rooms. It taught me how to code switch, to be honest with y'all. You know what I mean? And the thing is, this is not our country. It's not always built on our backs, but it is not our country. And so you have to learn how to play the game.
You have to.
And so to learn how to play the game, you got to be around people that do not look and sound like you.
Amen.
We are just, as a people, we just get into a point where, things are looking better and we're actually making money and whatever. But up until that point, to get somewhere, you got to play the game.
Absolutely.
And the game ain't in the inner city.
Absolutely. And, even with small businesses in our communities, like the Black dollar does not circulate within our communities very long.
No,
it just
at
all. And so while we are starting to accumulate a level of power in the business space, in the education space, in the lawyer space, in the political space, wealth is something that we are still absolutely chasing after. And I humbly believe there is a parallel and a connection to us being disproportionately affected by violent crime because we have not accumulated and amassed the amount of wealth that some of our other races have been able to do.
And see, now you done got me started, Melesa. Because
I'll get started.
Because you got to understand that slavery was not that long ago.
Hello.
And a lot of us, we are still fighting to get away from the strongholds of slavery.
Absolutely.
Slavery was a complete spiritual thing, in my opinion. Now, this is my opinion. I'm a very spiritual person, but it was spiritual. Language is a spiritual thing. The first thing that they did was they stripped us of our language. Our language has, it's deeper than what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying? So we come to a place where we're completely stripped of our native language and we're taught a whole nother custom, a whole nother spiritual way to express yourself. And so and on top of that, we were completely brainwashed. And what we felt was violence. We didn't do what was said, we got beaten. And so then what happens? Well, as a Black woman that's getting beat by this man, if my child don't do what I say, he's getting beaten too, because that's all that I know. What else is there? And if I don't beat you and I don't get this into you quickly, he can kill you or take him from me. So you got to understand what I say. You got to do what I say when I say it. So it ain't no, well, let's gently parent. No, you getting whooped.
Right.
Until you understand.
Right.
This is something, then it's the whole Jim Crow thing, the dark-skinned slave against the light-skinned slave. This was not taught to us. It was a beat into us.
Right.
Infused into our DNA. You understand what I'm saying?
And look at how we are operating in the world now. We are still dealing with the remnants of that. Post-traumatic slave disorder is very, very real. We still deal with colorism. We still deal with religious judgment. We still deal with all of crabs in a barrel mentality, right? We still deal with all of these things that originated during that period when we were literally sold and treated as chattel. Like, we are still dealing with the effects of this. And that's why, I will always be willing and ready and invested and having conversations about the systemic inequities that got us to a point where people of color are the primary demographic affected by violent crime.
Yeah.
Failing schools, food deserts, disinvestment, all of these things, the GI Bill, home ownership, all of these things that have created this structural imbalance. And so I'll always be willing to have those conversations. But in the same vein, we have to have conversations in-house amongst our people about how, yes, society has not always been kind to us, but we're not being kind to each other either. We have a lot of cultural issues.
Oh, we do.
That we need to address as a people. We love to glorify violence in our music and our movies and our TV shows. And trust me, y'all, I'm a product of the inner city. I understand why people carry guns. I don't agree with it, but I understand. I understand why people have poor conflict resolution skills. If I'm growing up in an environment where everybody around me solves their problems and their conflicts through violence, what do you think I'm going to do?
That's all you know.
That's all I know. That's all I know. I understand all of the steps that God is here. So I will never place the responsibility of the circumstances or the blame of the circumstances on my people. But what I am ready and willing to do, especially with this election, is to place the responsibility of change on my people. Because when we talk about people that are incarcerated and the racial disparities within that, who do you think they're victimizing? People of color. People of color. Y'all, generations of young Black people are being extinguished from this earth. And it's not by police officers. It's not by systemic inequities. It's by us. And until we are ready and willing to get uncomfortable in having that conversation, we're not going to progress anywhere. We love to march when there's perceived police brutality, which is important. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm so glad about how our country banded together after George Floyd. But where's that same energy when we do it to each other? Where's that same energy? I know that there are people that really care about this issue, but y'all, we have to get just as outraged when one of us takes another life as we get when a police officer purportedly takes another life. And we don't, by and large, on a grand scale. We don't. We love to do free so-and-so t-shirts, free so-and-so Facebook posting. In some circumstances, that is appropriate because, let's be clear, the criminal legal system has not been just to us. That's why I don't call it a criminal justice system. It hasn't been just to my people. It's a criminal legal system. Has not always been fair. But in some circumstances, in a lot of circumstances, no, don't free him. Because we have a responsibility to each other to be better. And until we are ready to name that, until we are ready to lean heavily into that, this issue is just going to continue to spiral out of control.
So tell me, when did you know you wanted, like in your heart, in your spirit, that you wanted to be a lawyer?
That's a great question. So I've always been pretty civically engaged, even as a kid, doing a lot of volunteering. I was on Generation Rap. I hosted the show for a couple of years on Hot 103 Jams. And so just kind of always being civically engaged and understanding Black history. A lot of the figures in the civil rights movement that really progressed our people forward were lawyers, right? Thurgood Marshall and his landmark decisions and his landmark practice that actually reached to him being the first ever person of color as a Supreme Court justice. Carter G. Woodson, all of these figures that were attorneys and that really progressed our people forward. So I always had an interest, but I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist when I first went to college. I took my first science class and quickly learned that that was not my ministry. It did not really, that was not it. And so at that time, I was a political science and African-American studies minor. And so I was kind of thinking to myself, my godfather and my godmother, they're both attorneys. And so I talked to them about a career in law and they said, just think about it. And so I looked deeper into it. And so it really wasn't until my sophomore year in college that I knew definitively that I wanted to be a lawyer.
And then how'd you go about doing that?
So there's a lot of steps. I wish during that period that I was more proactive about seeking out a mentor and asking a lot of questions. And so because of that, I really take it upon myself to make sure that I am a resource for other people that are thinking about going down that road. When you are in undergrad, you will need to take a test that is called the LSAT in order to get into law school. I highly recommend taking a study course, because it's a very analytical test. You almost have to know how to take it. It's not just what the contents or the subjects of the test is. You actually have to know how to go about it. There's logic games and very complex reading comprehension, just basically testing your analytical skills. So I took a prep course for the LSAT. I highly recommend it. Make sure you take it early. You can take it more than once.
What was that prep course that you took?
It was a Kaplan prep course. I did it online, so it was very convenient, but I highly recommend it because you really have to know how to take a test. And you were actually talking about this in one of your other interviews that I got to listen in on. A lot of these tests are not designed for people of color. There's implicit bias in a lot of the tests. And so getting that training to know how to approach the different questions is very important. Take it early because, like I said, you can take it more than once and they just average your scores. I wish I would have known that. And then apply to as many law schools as you possibly can. Once you get into one, you can kind of breathe and then just see the other admissions that roll in. Once you get into law school, hit your first year really, really hard. It is a completely different learning style than I experienced in undergrad when I was getting my undergrad degree. It is intense. It is tough. Find you a good study group, people that you can trust, because it's very difficult to study for law school by yourself because it's such case law heavy, and you want to make sure that you are able to take into account other people's perspectives while you're studying. So I found me a core study group. And then, but if you don't hit your first year hard, it's very difficult to bounce back from that bad GPA because it's only 3 years versus 4. So make sure you give your first year everything that you have. Then once you get to your third year, the summer after your third year, I highly recommend once again taking another prep course to take the bar. It is again a very difficult test to take. It's long.
I heard
it's multiple days. I literally locked myself in my apartment in Columbia, Missouri for that entire summer and just studied. I treated it like a job. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I just studied, and I was able to pass on the first try. And so, yes.
That one right there, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It's hard work, but it's so rewarding and it's so fulfilling because with a law degree, you can do so much other than practice law. You can be a sports agent. You can be a business owner. You can be a real estate professional. I know people with law degrees that do all of those things. So it's a struggle, but it's certainly worth it.
I love it. The thing about it is, I believe that this is the era of information.
Yes, it is.
We can redefine ourselves or define ourselves as a people.
Amen.
Unity is the biggest thing for me. If we unify, do you know how powerful we would be? Do you know what we could solve? We could talk solutions now. We're in a position to talk solutions. We have been set back as a people.
Yes,
there's no denying that. Even from taking our language to beating theories into our head to not allowing us to the gates of wealth with home ownership. Banks wouldn't even give us a loan. All these things are true. But at the same time, I do feel like as Black people, we are progressing.
Yes, we are.
And through the mud and hell, we've been stabbed, but we still prevailed. In every single industry and every single aspect of life, we have found a way to peek our heads and show who we are. We know how to still thrive.
Thank you.
Because of our perseverance and our passion. Because this is the era of information, we can't continue to use that as a crutch.
Absolutely.
Even though it is truth. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not truth. It is truth.
Mm-hmm.
We are hurt. If we stay there, we're going to stay there. We're going to continue to be abused. We're going to continue to kill each other. We are some of the most emulated people in this country. Everybody want to be a Black person, but don't nobody want to be a Black person. And y'all know exactly what I mean by that. And that's power. It is power that we have not understood how to use for the world's benefit, for our benefit, for our children's benefit. And now it is time. We understand the language, we understand the lingo, we understand the world, we understand ourselves. Those us that are seasoned and learned and have studied and put in the work, we understand ourselves. The children may not understand themselves, but that is why it takes generations coming together to fill the gap.
Absolutely.
And so now, yeah, we've been at a disadvantage. But we've shown our passion and our heart. We've shown what we can do when we put our minds together. We've shown what we can do as individuals. We are a beautiful, spiritual, chosen people. So it's time to wash away the past. Don't forget it, because it makes us who we are. It gives us our grit and our grind and our passion and our soul and our music and our art and the way that we talk and we walk and we converse with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But no more excuses. This is the era of information. It's at our fingertips. We can talk across generations. We need to, as a people, unify big issue and communicate another big issue in our community and talk about solutions. How do we redefine ourselves?
Absolutely.
How do we move forward? How do we flip our dollar? More than even the Jewish community. And if y'all know the Jewish community, I don't even know how many times they flipped that dollar. I don't even know if it's on a scale. So what are solutions? How do we change our trajectory as a people? How do we stop the killing? What do we do? Do you know, Melesa?
I do know.
Come on,
I do know. I have quite a few ideas. And I just love that explanation that you just gave so much, because it highlights the fact that multiple things can be true at one time, right? Like, we have definitely, and by we, I mean people of color, chattel slavery, Jim Crow, school segregation, the GI Bill, you know, all of these things that created these wide socioeconomic gaps and achievement gaps that we still are reeling with and dealing with to this day. But at the same time, we do have personal responsibility for the direction and the trajectory of our people. We do. And so with that, you know, some of the ideas and the plans that I had when elected, because manifestation is real, we're going to speak it into existence.
Yes,
right?
prosecutor.
Amen. Amen. You know, one of the biggest things that I think about is the fact that the prosecutor's office has an annual fund of $30 million a year. Again, it's annual, that they get to spend on violence prevention and intervention activities. $30 million. It's not a drop in the bucket. It's not going to solve all of our problems, but that's a substantial chunk of money, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's under the control and authority of the prosecutor's office. So in my mind, we need to spend that money on things that are going to yield results right now the fastest. Housing. I want to buy some vacant houses, some land bank houses, fix them up and rent them to returning citizens, because finding housing people for people with criminal histories is one of the biggest barriers to getting them back on our feet. In order to get somebody that is a returning citizen that has a criminal record, our affordable housing stock right now in our community is already deficient. According to a Mark study, we are about 56,000 units of affordable housing short in our community. That number gets even smaller when you're talking about people with criminal histories, because a landlord can look at, you know, a person's application and ask that question and take that into account when they decide to rent to them. But what happens when you don't have a home? What happens when you don't have a place to lay your head? You can't get mail there, right? You don't have an anchor. So everything else that you're trying to do with your life becomes 10 times more difficult. Okay, I have to get to work, but I don't have the luxury of getting to work from the same place every single morning because I'm transient and I'm floating from couch to couch, right? So I want to actually buy land bank homes, make sure that people get on their feet, right? And then when we talk about workforce development, getting people jobs, and these are not just about returning citizens, but also high risk people most likely to shoot or be shot. In the past, those opportunities have been very, very labor heavy, which is honest work. I have a lot of uncles and friends that are in the construction business, and it can be very lucrative if you go about it the right way and if you are knowledgeable and aware of the space. But in 2024, especially once again, our primary demographic is young people ages 16 to 25. If they have to choose between responding to a construction site by 4 a.m. every single morning versus being an entrepreneur, versus getting into film, versus becoming a podcast content creator or a cosmetologist, what do you think they're going to choose?
They're trying to get that podcast cracking.
Exactly.
That's their language. That's
Exactly. We have to stop choosing and using 10-year-old strategies to fight a 2024 problem.
Woo!
We do.
Say it one more. I'm gonna make you repeat this whole interview because
Absolutely.
Say it again.
We have to stop using 10-year-old strategies to fight a 2024-year-old problem. You can make a lucrative career being an influencer if you find your right lane, if you find your right niche. If you want to be an entrepreneur, let's meet you where you are and give you an actual opportunity to do so. Heck, if you want to do music, right? I will literally use portions of that $30 million fund and get you a couple of hours in a music studio so you can lay your track down. But guess what? I'm going to need 6 to 7 hours of conflict resolution training in return. We have to stop using old strategies to meet the people that are most impacted by this issue. What we have been doing has not been working. So getting people back on track in a true restorative way is one of the biggest parts of my platform. We have to focus on the root causes. We absolutely have to. But, you know, if the root cause work does not yield fruitful and people still find themselves embroiled in a life of violent crime, we'll talk about property crime in a second, but violent crime, I'm talking about our assaults, our shootings, our homicides. Accountability has to be a part of the equation. It just does, because like I mentioned earlier, in the post-George Floyd era, I am so thankful that we are talking more about the equity and constitutional rights of offenders, because it is important. But who do we think they're victimizing? It's people that live around them. It's people that look like them. And so where's the justice? Where's the accountability for the person that has owned their home for 40 and 50 years and they're now scared to walk outside? Our elders are terrified in these neighborhoods. Where's Big Mama's justice? Right? Like, and so we need to take a more proactive and aggressive stance against crime, especially violent crime, because when we don't, 2023 happens, a record-setting year as it pertains to homicides. More homicides than we've ever had. But guess what happened the year prior to that? We only cleared 18% of non-fatal shooting cases. So over 80% of people that shot somebody in 2022 didn't receive a single consequence. None. And so then that creates this.
None. What do you mean? So what happened is on the streets?
They weren't prosecuted. Yeah, they were just on the streets. They were just on the streets for a variety of reasons. Those cases didn't come to fruition. When we fail to hold people accountable, it adds and contributes to this feeling of lawlessness that would inspire a 15 or 16-year-old to open fire in a sea of 1.5 million people and 850 law enforcement officers, which is exactly what happened at the Chiefs Victories Parade.
That was so embarrassing.
It was so embarrassing. It was sad. It was a true tragedy all around, right? You have this innocent woman, Lisa Lopez Galvan, that lost her life.
Rest her soul.
Her kids were right around her and witnessed this trauma, right? The 22 victims that will literally be traumatized by this incident, probably for the foreseeable future, right? I grew up on the East Side. I've run from about 8 or 9 shootings at this point, right? I don't want to say it's normalized because it should never be normalized, but I know what to do when I'm in the midst of shooting. A lot of other people don't.
And it's sad.
Right? And it's sad.
It's sad that we know what to do in these situations because we've been in them so much.
Exactly. But you know what is also a tragedy? The fact that those young men had even access to automatic weapons. The fact that those young men didn't have enough hope in their minds and their hearts to think about their actions and the consequences that would stem from them before they took an act like that. The fact that they didn't have enough community support to know that growing old is actually the cool thing to do. Having kids and seeing them walk across your high school stage to graduate is the cool thing to do. So all of those things involved in that day was a tragedy. And so because of that, you know, the state of Missouri has the third most relaxed gun laws in the entire country, meaning it's the third easiest state to acquire a firearm. The day after the mass shooting, the governor made very clear that he has no plans on enacting any common sense gun reform, right? So our energy is best suited and best served in changing how these young people think and changing how people that commit violent crimes think in general. But in order to do that, we have to understand cultural competence. You cannot send a person that is not a minority into a classroom full of high school colored kids and expect them to teach them conflict resolution successfully. No, they probably need to hear from somebody that's been ingrained in the life themselves. They probably need to hear from somebody with a criminal history that can say, hey, I changed my life around and I'm living proof that you can do the same. So while we do that work on root causes in a new, modern, different way, we also have to focus on accountability, right? So making sure that we are aggressively charging cases that we can charge to make sure that people in this community know that if you shoot and hurt somebody in Jackson County, there will be swift and decisive justice. We need to leverage technology more, right? Because right now, it takes us about 2 months to analyze a cell phone that is collected in a violent crimes case. By then, a lot of the information...
2 months?
2 months.
Say somebody is a suspect in a shooting.
Yep.
It takes you 2 months to get their phone.
Your run-of-the-mill case, yes. There are some occasions, like the high-profile cases, of course, with the Crown Center shooting, other shootings where there might be a time where you prioritize analytics for a cell phone collected, but usually your everyday murder, your everyday shooting, takes about 2 months. But then I've studied other jurisdictions and how they've been able to get this issue under control. There are data proven models out there in the country. In Las Vegas, simply by analyzing cell phones collected in a violent crime within 48 hours, they were able to increase their clearance rate substantially within a span of 1 year. They were able to hold so many more people accountable simply because they turned that cell phone data around quickly. I mean, just think about the way you use your cell phone. It tells you where to be, when to be there, how to get there, what your online shopping habits have been, who you've been talking to. It's a trove of information that we are not tapping into quickly. So I actually want to use money and invest in bringing those cell phone analytics in-house so that we can do them quicker and we can produce more actionable information for our detectives. Also, in KCK, they are killing it over there, y'all.
As far as what? Tell me about that.
So the first
year. I wind up, people.
Yes, no.
Wind up. Just turn your ears up. Here we go.
Y'all need to give a huge shout out to Chief Carl Oakman, who is killing the game over in KCK. When Chief Oakman, his first year when he took office as chief of police, he actually used to be on KCPD, so I had the opportunity to know him fairly well. That first year, 56 homicides, in the ballpark of 56 homicides. That second year, 29 homicides. The third year while he was chief of police, 26. He's nearly cut them in half by using this strategy. Aggressively prosecuting fentanyl dealers. That's the butter. That's the magic in his theory and in his policies that he's been advancing. Right now, currently in Jackson County, we are not prosecuting any drug cases unless there is an aspect of community interruption or violence.
Why? Why is it?
Because of prosecutorial discretion. The prosecutor is the most powerful person in the entire criminal legal system. What they decide to charge on the front end, and it is totally within their discretion, dictates the range of punishment. It dictates whether or not you can get probation for your particular charge, whether or not that probation can be expunged from your record. It's all prosecutorial discretion. And so our current prosecutor decided, and she had good reasons, right? The racial disparity between people that are of color and that are not of color as it pertains to being charged with a drug case It's stark, right? Obviously, more Black men, more Black women are being charged with drug offenses. And for possession level cases, that makes sense because if I have a possession amount of drugs, it indicates that I probably need treatment. Locking me up is not going to do much for me. I need treatment. I need medical help and support. But for distributors, I drive past 35th and Prospect every night. I see the zombie land that some of these decisions have been producing. So what they do over in KCK, anytime there is an overdose, a fentanyl overdose, whether it's lethal or non-lethal, they have a team, a response team that deploys a police officer, a prosecutor, and a social worker. What that does is it puts either the person that was revived or resuscitated from their overdose and makes them now your witness. Or if the person that overdosed is dead, it makes the family of the deceased person your witness. So then it makes it easier for you to go after the fentanyl dealers who probably are possessing guns. I mean, if you're selling drugs, having a firearm is an occupational hazard at this point. Mm-hmm. And so when you are able to prosecute those cases in an aggressive way, you are able to confiscate all of those weapons that are associated with the fentanyl drug trade that then can no longer be used in an assault, a non-fatal shooting, and a homicide. We have an example of success right across state line that we can easily implement right over here.
Why haven't we?
You know, those are questions for people in leadership right now. I can't necessarily answer those questions, but all I can say is if elected and when elected, I will absolutely prescribe to that plan and follow the model that has been so eloquently set out for us by Chief Oakman in the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. And so that is how I plan on strengthening our investigative strategies to hold more people accountable, because if people aren't being held accountable, there's no deterrent. I have no reason to stop committing crime if me and all of my homeboys have been going free and have been going unscathed,
like
right?
Wow, West.
Exactly. And so really briefly on property crime, though, because I do feel it is important. Of course, when you're looking at the totem pole, right, when you're looking at the totem pole of shootings and drug cases, property crime naturally falls to the bottom of the totem pole. But the harsh reality is if you or I get our car stolen, we'll get another car. But for a lot of people in our community that don't have insurance, they don't have the same access to resources.
And a lot of people don't.
A lot of people don't. It can mean not being able to get to work on time, so I lose my job. It can mean not being able to get my child to school on time, so they're not learning to the capacity that they should be. We have to prioritize property crimes. And frankly, for the offender, it's an opportunity to intervene before their criminality escalates. Think about all these young people, the Kia boys, literally learning how to steal Kia cars off of TikTok using a USB port.
That is
it's insane. If we don't check that,
TikTok changed my life though, but not in a
bad way. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. But if we don't check that behavior early, it will continue to escalate into further criminality. So what I want to do is I want to stand up a standalone property crimes division. Right now, all of those property crimes cases are going to the general crimes division, which handles shootings, drug cases, a whole hodgepodge of things. Standing up this separate division and turning it into a clinic for law students. So I don't have to tie up attorney time. It's literally being staffed by law students who get to get real life practical experience, but these cases get the exclusive attention and focus that they deserve. We don't have to completely change the entire system. We just need to get creative and modernize it. Again, we're using 10-year-old strategies to fight a 24-year-old problem. And then lastly, diversifying the prosecutor's office is really important to me. We always talk about the importance of having diversity of backgrounds and race in law enforcement agencies, police officers. But that same importance relies with the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office as well. You cannot approach these cases with empathy and understanding and, frankly, accountability if you don't live in these neighborhoods.
That's why I respect so much that you stayed in the hood.
If you don't live in these neighborhoods. When I did my campaign announcement speech in September of last year, I spoke from the heart. I had this long speech prepared, but I just got to the podium and did my thing. And It just came out. I told the community that if you decide to continue to kill and shoot people in this county, my message to you will be clear. Change your life or I'll change it for you. And I mean that because I too go to sleep to the sound of gunshots about 50% of the time. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Literally, babies are losing their lives. Babies are shooting people. They have access to guns before they have access to a high school diploma. This is the world that we are living in. And I am not willing to stand for it. I am not willing to stand for it on behalf of systemic inequities and racism. I get it. I understand it. I've studied it. I was an African American studies minor in college. But y'all, present day, we have to do better. And by we, I'm talking to my people because it's us primarily driving this crime. It's us primarily being victimized by this crime. And until we're ready to assume responsibility for that harsh reality, this issue is going to continue to tear apart our communities to the point where we don't even have communities. We don't even have communities. Gentrification is real. If we want investment, if we want people coming and building things in our neighborhoods, we have to understand how crime drives potential investors away. We always say we want more jobs in our neighborhoods, but are we conducting ourselves in a way that actually invites and welcomes that? I beg to argue right now, we're not. That doesn't mean that we can't. It just requires somebody to get elected to leverage that office to have these conversations on a wide and broad scale.
That was a lot to unload.
Well, sorry.
No. It ain't. It's not a sorry. It's a lot to chew on.
It is.
And I appreciate it. And you very clearly have a very clear plan on what you want to do, on solutions. And that's where I'm at with it. Solution based.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I said, it's issues. We need to look inward as we do as individuals in our life journey.
Absolutely.
It's always looking inward to be better. You got to be in tune with yourself and your way of thinking and your faults and your flaws to ever reach ultimate level of self.
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of times there needs to be communication between these younger folks and the older generation, the boomers and the Gen Z, or what's the other generation under Z called? I forget what it's called.
Gen X?
One of them.
No, maybe. I just don't believe
it. Needs to the experience and then the new way of thought needs to be meshed and talked about. And you are so right. We are living not only with crime, and those models, but we're living in a lot of our models are antiquated. Even the model of the American family is antiquated.
Yes, it is.
And for us as women, it's an antiquated thing.
Yes,
where men back in the day brought home all the bread and the wife sat there and with her pearls and her vacuum. And she kept the family together, even if the man was sleeping with everybody on the block. As long as he was taking care of home, she stayed and she turned her shoulder. And no, that's an antiquated model. It does not work like that anymore. Women are fierce. Women are making their own money. Women have stepped into their true light, and the model doesn't work anymore.
Exactly.
I know that's kind of off the skelter, but that's a lot of reasons why, because a lot of it starts with the family.
Yes, it does.
With what you're dealing with crime, a lot of it starts with broken homes. As we know, to even get help from the government, you couldn't even have a man in the home.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? Like the breakup of the family has been an issue in our community for a very long time.
And by design.
By design. Like these people have thought about this. This is chess.
And by design. And it's just like, I want to be clear that I'm not being unfairly harsh on people of color. I'm not. That's not my MO.
Yeah.
I love us. I love being Black. I tell people all the time, if I had to do it all over again and I had a choice from God as to what I wanted to look like and how I wanted to move around this world, I would choose Black every single time. But y'all, we have to get honest and unapologetically real, or we cannot change anything that we are experiencing. No. Yes, a lot of our current reality is the byproduct of well thought out systemic oppression. But why are we furthering that oppression? Why are we perpetuating the same stereotypes that they try to place upon us?
Yeah.
We're not inherently violent people.
Yeah.
We're not.
No, we're not. We're people of love.
Exactly.
We are. We have been put into corners and almost pushed towards this sort of thing.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Truth is truth.
Absolutely.
The hardest thing to do is look in the mirror.
Absolutely.
And say, this is what I have become. Regardless of who got me here, who drove me here, if I got myself here, if oppressors got me here, this is who I've become. How do I deal with it?
How do I deal? And we're at the how do we as a community deal with it? Mm-hmm. Y'all need to get y'all kids. Get your children. No, I really mean this.
No, that's why it's so fun. But this is why I went back to the antiquated,
right?
Because you really struck something when you said that the models are antiquated.
Yes.
It's just like America needs an upgrade. Like maybe, I mean, our president is like umpteenth years old. Like I'm being serious though. And a lot of them we're based off of what has worked. But time has changed, the environment has changed, COVID changed so much. And so things have to adapt. And that's why I said with the family is still based off of an antiquated system that worked 30 years ago.
Exactly.
And this is why these children are out of control. You can't control them. They don't listen. They don't how do we get the children to listen to the older generation? How do we get to take their experiences and calm some of these kids down? Because they have these weapons that they should not have, and they are not responsible.
Exactly.
They have no value of life. They're very desensitized from video games and other technology, because that's what technology does.
Even think about the things that have emerged since, the day of yesteryear, even as recent as pre-COVID. I mean, social media is just on a completely different level. A lot of people that had jobs that they couldn't work from home. So thinking more of your blue collar type of professions where people were not able to earn during that period. So then what happens? The socioeconomic earning gap just gets wider and wider, and we fall farther and farther behind. Right. And so we have to take a modern approach to fighting crime, to public safety, and to your point, a modern approach to everything that we do, how we go about life. Because if we don't, we're going to keep spinning on this hamster wheel where we are complacent and staying stagnant in the same exact spot.
Absolutely. I love that. So is there anything that you would just say, somebody that wants to do, because a lot of people, it's intimidating, right? My dad always wanted me to be a lawyer because I used to argue myself out of punishments and things like that. But I said, man, I hear how hard the bar is. That's a lot of school. It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of politics. And so I was always, and I think I would have made an okay lawyer, but I was honestly always intimidated and afraid of it. And I think a lot of people are, as you a big lawyer, that's the American dream jobs. You know what I mean? So if a little you was listening to this and was saying, I think I want to do it, like, what would you say to a little you that has interest but is maybe afraid or intimidated?
I would tell little Melesa, if she was thinking about getting into the practice of law, I would remind her, just like I would remind anybody else, your inputs equal your outputs. The more you work, the more effort that you put in, naturally, it's going to yield in you being able to accomplish and achieve your goals. It's just like any other test. And I know that's difficult to wrap our minds around. It was difficult to wrap my mind around it as well. But I'll be honest with you, because I worked so hard and put so much time in, by the time I got done with the bar, it was almost kind of like, oh, that's it? That's it. But it has to be a byproduct of your hard work. You can literally do anything. And I know that sounds cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. Because they have truth.
For a reason, right?
Because they have truth.
Yeah.
So just remember, like with working out, like with any other profession, your inputs equal your outputs. What you put into the process is what you're going to get out of it. And that's what I would tell little Melesa.
Discipline is a hard thing.
It really is.
And discipline is the key to so many things, so many successes in life.
Amen.
But it's hard to develop, especially when you're working for yourself.
Exactly.
When you're chasing a check, you could be disciplined, but when you don't have a boss over your head and it's just you and you versus you for ownership, for your ultimate goal,
it's a lot.
It's different.
It's a lot. And I feel like I'm in that season right now, of course, being a political candidate, understanding that it's me versus me. Like, I have to drown out all of the noise. I have to drown out all of the distractions. And the harder I work, the better my chances are at winning this historic election.
Listen, hard work will override talent.
Yes.
Favor, all that, any day. Who is working the hardest? You outwork everybody, you're going to always have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
And I firmly believe that.
Same here. Those athlete days.
Yeah. It's hard work. Hard work can get you so far. So, we've gotten to that moment. Miss Johnson.
Yes.
This is our honesty hour, where you're going to look into the camera. You're going to start with let's be honest. And you're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about, whatever's on your heart, whatever is the most important to you to get out right now. You want to talk to the younger version of you. You want to talk about your campaign. You want to talk about something you heard on the radio, the state of America. I don't care. But you're going to start it with let's be honest. We're going to give you 60 seconds. You're going to look right into your camera.
All right. Let me get situated.
Yeah. You know, roll them shoulders back. Clear your voice.
All righty.
Yep, and let's speak to the people.
All right. So y'all, let's be honest. I'm tired. I know y'all are tired. Your grandmothers are tired. Your parents are tired. Our communities are tired. Even the people driving crime and ingrained in the life of the streets, I know y'all are tired. I know you want opportunity. I know you want true shots at transformation. And honestly, I'm ready to be the one to give it to you if elected as Jackson County prosecutor on August 6th. And with that, eradicating root causes, making sure that people have adequate access to opportunity to really change their lives. Y'all, we really have to honestly understand how tired our communities are and the fact that we, our own people, are the one generating the fatigue. Y'all, it's time to really hold each other and ourselves accountable. We can't just completely rely on the legal system and on police officers. Get your own kids. Get your own siblings. If you and your significant other are no longer together and you all have a child, understand your responsibility to be present and understand that it could literally have life or death implications. We are living in an era where it is easier for a young person to have access to an automatic weapon than to get a high school diploma. A high school diploma. And in many ways, these are uniquely our issues. Our issues. And you know what frustrates me the most about that harsh reality? Literally 119 Black men losing their lives last year to homicide, 15 Black women losing their lives to homicide, 70% of the homicide victims last year being of people of color, is that we don't vote. We have opportunities every 4 years and even more frequently in local elections to make our voices heard and to state to the rest of the world that we are ready to make a change, but we don't capitalize on it. In the last 5 primaries, 29% of the electorate was under the age of 39. Only 29%. And then when you start talking about people of color, y'all, it is our birthright. Our ancestors died for us to have the right to make our voices heard at the ballot box. And we are not capitalizing on it. And I understand federal elections, presidential elections, you may not feel like those results have an impact on your daily life, but if there was ever a time to vote, if you've had a loved one that has been treated unfairly by the criminal legal system, if you yourself has been treated unfairly, if you sought justice and you never received it, now is the time to make your voice heard and to leverage your birthright and your God-given responsibility to honor the ancestors' sacrifices and to cast your vote for Melesa Johnson for Jackson County prosecutor on August 6th, 2024.
Woo! Insert claps like a mug. Ooh, yes. Y'all, I am so honored to have Melesa on my show. Girl, I'm so proud of you. You are so intelligent and beautiful, and you radiate such warmness.
Thank you. Light attracts light. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Light attracts light, and I'm so excited to see what you do for this city.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. I support you. I'm behind you. I'm so happy that I got a moment to sit down and just be genuine with you and talk to you and let our viewers see your personality and see who you are. But I know that God has really big things in store for you. This campaign, another campaign, but you're supposed to bring about change for our people. It is in you, it burns in you. I feel it radiating off that couch. And so I say, sis, keep going.
Thank you.
I support you. I'm proud of you. You are a beautiful person. You're a beautiful soul. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see what God has in store for you. Thank you for coming and talking. Thank you for chilling in the living room and having tea with me.
Yes, thank you for having me. Cheers, y'all. Cheers.
Good night, y'all. Until next time, I'll see y'all. Let's be honest with your girl, Honesty J. Edwards, and our future prosecutor,
Melesa Johnson.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, girl.
Thank you, thanks.
Let's be honest, let's be honest, let's be honest. I kinda like some of the drama, but only the kind that puts commas and bank statements are movie rosters. Let's be honest, let's be honest. I switch when I walk cause I won't. Business talk to like Obama. A hater, I feed him no karma. Let's be honest, let's be honest.